Maria Torres, 32, worked the early morning shift at a small roadside diner nestled just outside the old Marine Corps base in North Carolina. Every single day, without fail, she arrived at 5 a.m., tying her worn, faded apron with practiced hands, the kind of hands that had known both hardship and resilience. Her dark hair was always pulled back into a neat ponytail, revealing a face that bore the unmistakable traces of life's most brutal battles, literally and figuratively. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but those who looked closely couldn't miss the network of scars that told a different story. A trail of thick, pale lines stretched from her right temple down the length of her neck, disappearing beneath the collar of her uniform, only to reappear like a cruel reminder along her right arm. The regulars didn't ask. The truck drivers pulling in before sunrise for breakfast ahead of long hauls, the third shift workers wrapping up their nights, and the elderly couples who came in for the $2 coffee refills and stayed until lunch. They all saw the scars. But they pretended not to. They'd glance once, maybe out of instinct, then deliberately bury their attention in their eggs, toast, or newspapers. Some whispered theories behind her back when they thought she couldn't hear. Must have been a car wreck. Probably a house fire. Drug addict, I bet. Those people do crazy things, you know. They thought they were being discreet, but Maria always heard. She never corrected them, never flinched, never responded. She just kept pouring coffee, delivering plates, and collecting tips with a quiet grace that was too often mistaken for invisibility. Then came that Tuesday morning, the kind of day that starts just like any other, until suddenly it doesn't. The early rush had thinned. The diner had quieted to the familiar hum of low conversation and clinking silverware when three middle-aged men strolled in. Business types. You know the kind. White shirts, ties loosened just enough to say they were off duty, expensive watches flashing under the diner's fluorescent lights. They were loud from the start, their voices projecting across the booths as they discussed quarterly reports, stock options, and their weekend golf handicaps like it was the most important thing in the world. Maria approached with menus, her steps measured, her face composed. Then it happened. The largest of the three men looked up, and his expression twisted into something ugly, a mixture of disdain and superiority. "You really think you should be serving customers with a face like that?" he said, his voice loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Wouldn't dishwashing in the back be more appropriate?" The diner fell silent. A spoon clattered onto a plate at the counter. An elderly man turned away, uncomfortable. Even the cook, who was mid-flip with a spatula, froze in place. But Maria didn't blink. She didn't let him see the sting of his words. Instead, she calmly placed the menus on the table and began pouring coffee into their mugs. Her hands were steady, her voice soft but powerful. "I've served people like you before," she said, letting the silence hang in the air, "but in much harsher conditions." The man raised his eyebrows. He looked to his friends, a smirk growing on his face. "Don't tell me you were military?" he scoffed. "With that face? You wouldn't make it past the parking lot at recruitment." The three men burst into laughter, the sound sharp and uncomfortable, bouncing off the diner's worn linoleum floor like a slap in the face. No one joined in. A trucker who had been sitting quietly at the back of the diner stood up abruptly, left cash beside his half-finished plate, and walked out. Maria kept working. Her hands trembled slightly now as she refilled a few coffee cups, but her eyes remained unwavering. She met each customer's gaze with calm determination, daring them to look away or pretend not to see. Eleanor, the diner's owner, noticed. She approached Maria near the service station, concern softening her lined face. "You okay, honey?" she asked in a whisper, voice trembling slightly. "I'm fine," Maria replied, arranging silverware with precise, focused movements. "I've dealt with people like this since Fallujah. This is nothing new." Fallujah. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire no one could forget. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on Maria's shoulder. "You don't have to take their order. I can do it." Maria shook her head. "No need. Some people just fear what they don't understand." Back straight, she picked up her coffee pot and returned to the tables. Nearby, an older man in a faded military cap watched everything. As he stood to leave, he placed a $20 tip beside his $5 breakfast and gave Maria a respectful nod on his way out. She returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement between those who understood the weight of invisible burdens. Because the truth, the scars that adorned Maria Torres's skin weren't from any car accident. They weren't the result of addiction or recklessness. They were earned. She had served as a logistics specialist and field medic with the Marines, Bravo 17 unit in Iraq. Her job was to keep supplies moving, to patch up the wounded until proper medical evacuation could arrive. It wasn't frontline combat, but it was never truly safe. In 2010, during her second tour, her forward operating base, Falb Courage, came under heavy mortar attack. Maria had been in the middle of inventory when the explosion started. Instead of seeking shelter, she ran toward the chaos, toward a transport vehicle engulfed in flames. 2 young Marines were trapped inside. She pulled one out, then dove back in for the second. That's when the secondary blast hit. It tore into her right side, flinging her like a rag doll against a concrete barrier. Everything after that was fragments. Pain, dust, blood, someone screaming her name, the thrum of helicopter blades in the distance. She never talked about it. Her discharge papers and Purple Heart sat in a dented metal box beneath her bed, along with photos she rarely looked at. Her official citations used words like valor and extraordinary courage. But Maria? She called it doing her job. Civilian life, though? That was the true battle. Job interviews went well, until she walked in. She saw it every time. The moment the interviewer noticed her scars, eyes dropped, expressions shifted. Polite rejections followed. We're looking for someone with different qualifications. We're concerned about public-facing roles. On and on it went, until she found Eleanor's diner. No fancy uniform, no corporate policies, just work, hard, honest work. Eleanor, whose own son had served in Afghanistan, had only asked one question during the interview. Can you start tomorrow? Maria poured herself into the job, quiet, punctual, unshakable. Each time young Marines from the nearby base came in, she paid special attention. Fresh coffee, a little extra bacon, a better table by the window. She noticed their unit patches, their posture, the way they moved. She didn't speak much, but she remembered everything. Just a week before the incident with the businessman, a group of young Marines had stopped in. They wore civilian clothes, but their bearing made it obvious who they were. Maria served them quickly, quietly. As they left, one stayed behind, placing a folded napkin under his coffee cup. She found it while clearing the table. Scrawled in neat block letters, "Thank you for saving our captain. I recognized you from the picture he keeps. PFC Reynolds, B-17. Maria didn't say a word. She tucked the napkin into her pocket and kept it there for days. A secret spark of warmth. Then came the morning after she'd been mocked. It began differently. She arrived at her usual time, 5:15 a.m., prepping the diner in silence. But as she unlocked the front door, something caught her eye. Movement across the street. A line of people had formed in the pre-dawn dark, wrapping around the block. Men, women, silent, still, standing in a posture she recognized instantly. Marines. Each one held something small wrapped in cloth. At exactly 6 a.m., as Maria flipped the open sign, the first man stepped inside. A tall figure with silver in his hair, sun-worn skin, and a presence that filled the room. He sat at the counter. "Coffee, black," he said. Then, more softly, "You don't remember me, do you, Torres?" She studied him, memory surfacing slowly. "Lieutenant Harlow," she breathed. "Captain now," he corrected, smiling faintly. "Though not for much longer. Retiring next month." "Congratulations, sir," she said, pouring his coffee. "I'm not here for congratulations." He placed a small, cloth-wrapped item on the counter. "I'm here to repay a debt. Do you remember the transport fire at Falb Courage?" Maria paused, the coffee pot midair. "I don't remember much, except that you couldn't get out on your own to know, and I had about 5 seconds to pull harder." Captain Harlow nodded. "And those 5 seconds changed everything. For 12 people behind me, they all came home, graduated, got married, had kids, because one woman dragged an entire squad out of that inferno." Outside, the line of Marines waited silently. Eleanor arrived, eyes wide. "What's going on?" she asked. Maria could barely speak, her throat tightened. She only shook her head. Captain Harlow unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a worn Bravo 17 unit medallion. "The first of many," he said. "Everyone who made it home wants to give something back to you. We've been searching for years. A private recognized you last week. Said his captain still kept your picture from the field hospital. when you were still treating others despite your own injuries. Maria blinked fast, swallowing emotion. I was just doing my job. No, Torres, Harlow said, his voice steady. You went far beyond your job, and none of us has forgotten. Have you ever seen someone become the center of gratitude? The quiet heart of a powerful memory shared across generations? Word spread like wildfire. A trucker, the same one who had walked out the day before, recorded the morning's events and posted it online. The world would soon know what those who had served already did. Maria Torres was a hero, scars and all. When a local truck driver posted the photo online with the caption, "A veteran disrespected, and this is how those she once saved responded," he had no idea what kind of wildfire he had just ignited. At first, the image and story spread quietly across town. But then, like a spark to dry brush, it took off, rippling across veteran networks and military forums, from Facebook groups to TikTok reels. By noon, the humble line outside Eleanor's diner had grown into something remarkable. It hadn't dwindled at all. In fact, it wrapped around the block, curving along the sidewalk and out of view like a parade of silent gratitude. Each Marine who entered didn't come for a fancy meal. No, they asked for simple orders: black coffee, eggs over easy, pancakes without the frills, but more importantly, they brought something for Maria. They came bearing tokens: a folded letter, a worn-out unit coin, a patch from a deployment long past. Some carried little cloth bundles, others just extended their hands, and all of them came with hearts full of thanks. No one came for attention. They came for her. The comment section on the viral post exploded like fireworks on the 4th of July. I was treated by Specialist Torres during a medevac from Fallujah. She didn't just save my leg, she saved my life. She gave me courage. Another wrote, my brother wouldn't have made it home without Bravo 17's Angel. Thank you for finding her. We've been searching for her ever since. It didn't take long for the local media to catch wind of what was happening. By mid-afternoon, news vans were parked out front and cameras were rolling, capturing the wave of people still waiting outside. Some had been standing for hours, just to shake Maria's hand, to look her in the eye, to say thank you. Some brought letters written years ago and never sent. Some came with trinkets passed down by family members no longer alive, all tracing back to her. Maria Torres, the quiet woman who wore her scars like medals and never once sought attention. Eleanor, the diner's owner, had never seen anything like it. She had to cancel the afternoon shift change and call in extra help to keep up with the crowd. But through it all, Maria never once stopped working. She moved with the same calm grace she always did, refilling cups, delivering plates, wiping down counters. And yet something was different. Each time someone handed her a coin or a keepsake, or even just a heartfelt thank you, her hands would tremble just slightly. But her eyes never looked away. Then, as if no time had passed at all, a young man entered using a prosthetic leg. Maria's breath caught. Her heart fluttered. And then recognition. I remember you, she whispered, voice cracking just a bit. You told jokes the entire time I was working on your tourniquet, she said, a soft smile forming. Had to make you laugh, he replied, grinning. Figured if I could make my medic smile while my leg was mostly gone, then I'd definitely survive. It was all too surreal. Even the man who had mocked Maria just the day before, the one who had sneered at her scars and questioned her worth, was watching the coverage from his hotel room. Shame bloomed across his face like a bruise. Overwhelmed by guilt, he picked up the phone and called the diner. I want to apologize, he began, clearly flustered when Eleanor handed Maria the phone. I had no idea. But Maria cut him off gently, her voice steady and kind, but unshakable. It's fine, she said firmly. You couldn't have known, but I judged you without. We all make judgments, she continued, cutting herself short. What matters is what we learn afterward. Then she hung up, just like that. No bitterness, no need for drama. And without another word, she went back to the counter, back to the coffee, back to the customers who waited. The apology had come too late, not because Maria couldn't forgive, but because she didn't need it anymore. She had never lived her life seeking approval from strangers. Later that day, a retired colonel stepped through the diner doors. He moved slowly, his cane tapping the linoleum in time with his breath. When his turn came, he looked Maria in the eyes. You won't remember me, he said, his voice rough with age. Maria tilted her head, studying him. I was unconscious when you found me, he continued. Northern Fallujah. The command post bombing. They told me you crawled through debris with a broken arm to reach me, administered blood plasma while the building was still coming down. Maria's face softened, her eyes searching. I remember the building, she said quietly. There were 3 of you trapped in the communications center. The colonel nodded solemnly. Only I made it out, because of you. He reached into his coat and pressed something into her hand, his colonel's eagle insignia. My daughter's a surgeon now, he said, tears welling up. She chose medicine because of the story I told her, about you. And it didn't stop. That day, story after story came pouring in, like waves crashing on the shore. Testimonies of courage, sacrifice, and survival. Families reunited, children born, lives changed, all because Maria had been there when others couldn't be. The impact of her quiet heroism had rippled through the years like echoes in time, and now, finally, it had come full circle. The next morning, Maria arrived at the diner at 5:15 as always. But something was different. Sitting at her station was a fresh cup of coffee, steaming just the way she liked it. No note, no name, just coffee. And that gesture, it would continue, every morning after, like a secret handshake of gratitude from someone who never wanted to be known. About a week after that whirlwind of recognition, a local news station asked Maria for an interview. She declined, politely but firmly. I didn't serve for recognition, she told Eleanor, and I don't need cameras to validate what happened. But when Captain Harlow called, yes, the same man she dragged from a burning transport, asking her to attend a small ceremony planned by former Bravo 17 members, she couldn't say no. They called the event The Scars That Served, and it was beautiful. It took place at the VFW Hall, just 3 blocks from the diner. Maria arrived in a simple black dress, her dark hair worn loose around her shoulders. For the first time in years, she made no effort to hide her scars. And when she walked through those doors, 200 people stood in unison. Not a word was spoken. But the silence said more than any applause ever could. When Captain Harlow presented her with the long overdue commendation, an official recognition of her heroism, Maria couldn't hold back. Tears spilled down her cheeks, tracing the very scars that had once made her invisible. Now they told a story no one would forget. We searched for you for 7 years, Captain Harlow said after the ceremony. After your discharge, you just vanished. Maria nodded. She knew why. I needed to disappear for a while, she admitted softly, to figure out who Maria Torres was without the uniform. When a lieutenant she'd once saved approached and asked if she had figured it out, Maria paused. I'm still figuring it out, she said honestly. But I know I'm someone who doesn't regret these. She touched the scars along her neck. They remind me that I was there when it mattered. Later, a young Marine stepped forward with his wife and baby son in his arms. This is Tommy, he said, smiling. His middle name is Torres. Maria's eyes widened. You didn't have to do that, she whispered, overwhelmed. We wanted to, the young woman replied. So he grows up knowing his name carries a legacy of courage. Then the retired sergeant major took the mic. Scars are something no one asks for, he said, his voice echoing in the hall. But sometimes they're proof someone didn't turn away when they had the chance. He revealed a shadow box containing Maria's Purple Heart, retrieved from military archives. You left this behind, he explained. We thought it should come home to you. Maria stared at the medal, the one she had hidden away for years. I never felt I deserved it, she said quietly. Not when others gave so much more. That's exactly why you deserve it, the sergeant major replied, because you never thought you did. And then, instead of clapping, the room filled with the rhythmic tapping of unit coins on tables, a military salute of the highest kind. It was electric, emotional, unforgettable. They gave her a leather-bound book filled with letters, hundreds of them, from people she had helped or inspired. The final page read, Your scars tell a story of selflessness. Our lives tell the story of your impact. The very next day, a package arrived at the diner. Inside was a custom name tag, Maria Torres, Bravo 717, with the Marine Corps emblem beneath. A note accompanied it. Wear this if you choose, so no one mistakes your scars for weakness again. Maria pinned it to her apron without hesitation. That very afternoon, the 3 businessmen returned, the same ones who had mocked her. They had extended their trip just to apologize in person. The one who had spoken first now looked humbled beyond words. "I came to say I'm sorry," he said, visibly nervous. "I judged you harshly without knowing anything about you." Maria studied him, quiet for a moment. "Sometimes the most important stories aren't visible on the surface," she said softly. "I've learned that," he admitted, "the hard way." Then he pointed to her name tag. "You're a hero." Maria gave a small, tired smile. "No," she replied. "I'm a survivor. I did what was necessary, just like anyone else would." "Not anyone," he said, eyes full of new understanding. "Not just anyone, and certainly not like Maria Torres. You ran toward danger when others ran away," the man exclaimed, awe etched in his voice. Maria, ever calm, simply refilled his coffee cup and replied, "That's not heroism, it's just duty." She said it with the kind of quiet conviction only someone who has truly been there could possess. As the men stood to leave, each one discreetly placed $100 bill beneath his plate. No words, no fuss. They didn't want attention, just to show their respect. Maria said nothing. She only gathered the bills, walked to the register, and without a moment's hesitation, dropped them into the donation jar marked Veteran Support Services. The bills slipped through the slot with a soft rustle, joining dozens of others that had accumulated over the week. That jar, once pitifully empty for months, now practically spilled over with generosity. People were giving back, not just with money, but with heart. From the kitchen doorway, Eleanor watched, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes misty. "You could have kept that money," she said, her voice thick. "God knows you've earned it." But Maria just smiled, a wide, full expression that seemed to glow from deep within, transforming her scarred face into something truly luminous. "I have everything I need," she said simply. "But there are others still finding their way home. Type justice if you believe that true character is eventually recognized, even if it takes years, because that's what was happening here." Maria's moment had come, not through fame or recognition she sought, but because those she once helped were finally finding their way back to her. And they were bringing stories, gratitude, and love. Today, Eleanor's Diner still operates much as it always has. The same blue-checkered curtains sway gently in the windows, catching the morning sun. The same chalkboard menu announces meatloaf on Thursdays and pot pie on Sundays, comfort food for the soul. And every morning at exactly 6 a.m., Maria is there pouring that very first cup of coffee. Only now, people call her something different. They call her the Block's Marine. Inside the diner, a new frame hangs proudly on the wall. It holds a faded photograph from 2010, taken by a combat photographer. In it, Maria's hands are bandaged, blood darkening the back of her uniform. She's carrying a young Marine away from a burning vehicle, smoke curling around her like a veil. Her face is partly obscured by soot and grime, but the determination in her eyes, absolutely unmistakable. Beneath the photograph, a small brass plaque reads the words, "Maria finally agreed could be shared. I never sought recognition. I only hoped those I pulled out would live long enough to live kindly toward others." Can you feel that? That surge in your chest? That's what honor feels like. The diner has become something of an unofficial memorial. Veterans now travel from neighboring states, not for the food, though Eleanor's pie is legendary, but to shake Maria's hand or leave behind something personal. Unit coins, dog tags, simple folded notes. Eleanor even installed a special shelf just for these offerings. Some visitors don't say a word. They just nod, and Maria nods back. That silent acknowledgement between warriors says more than words ever could. Every Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. sharp, a group of young Marines in training pack themselves into the corner booth. Maria serves them herself, always. Sometimes she even joins them during her break, sitting down to answer questions or offer quiet, grounded advice. The scars don't matter, she tells them. What matters is who you become despite them. One Tuesday, a young woman barely 20 years old, newly enlisted and still fresh from boot camp, nervously asked, "How did you handle the fear?" Maria didn't hesitate. "I never tried to be fearless," she said, surprising them all. "I just learned to act despite being afraid. There's a difference between being brave and being fearless. Fearless people don't understand the risks. Brave people do and move forward anyway." Goosebumps, right? Though the viral post that first brought Maria's story to light has faded from the news cycle, its impact remains. You can see it everywhere in the community. 3 local businesses have changed their hiring practices, giving priority to veterans with visible injuries. A scholarship fund now bears Maria's name, helping veterans train in medical professions. And the town council? They voted unanimously to rename the street where the diner stands. A small, heartfelt ceremony was held on Veterans Day. Maria didn't want to speak, but when they asked, she stood tall and said, "Thank you to everyone who ever wore a uniform. Our scars may look different, but we all carry them, visible or not." On quiet afternoons, Maria sometimes holds informal first aid classes in the diner's back room. She teaches young Marines how to apply tourniquets, how to stabilize fractures, how to keep someone calm through pain. Her hands, once steady under fire, still remain rock solid as she demonstrates life-saving techniques. Knowledge weighs nothing, she tells them, so carry as much as you can. Captain Harlow, now retired, still stops by the diner once a month, always sits at the counter, always orders his coffee black, and always leaves a unit coin beside his saucer. On his most recent visit, he brought an official letter, golden embossed, Marine Corps stationery. They want to feature your story in the training materials, he explained, to show new recruits what the core values really mean. Maria took the envelope gently, unsure. "My story isn't special," she said quietly. "There are thousands like me. That's exactly why it matters," Harlow said. "Because you represent all those who serve without fanfare, who carry their battles on their skin, who keep serving even after the uniform comes off." That night, in her small apartment, Maria opened the letter. The formal wording described her actions as embodying the highest traditions of the U.S. Marine Corps. She signed the consent form and added her own note in her familiar, strong handwriting. "Tell them the scars are just geography, maps showing where we've been, not limitations on where we can go." The next morning, beside her usual coffee cup at the diner, Maria found something new, a hand-carved wooden box. Inside, dozens of folded notes from local school children. Their teacher, a Marine veteran, had told them about Maria during a lesson on courage. One note, written in crayon, simply read, "Thank you for being brave when it was hard. My dad has scars too, but now he doesn't feel alone." Maria folded that note and placed it in her apron pocket. It stayed there for her entire shift, a quiet, powerful reminder that healing travels far beyond the person who begins it. Eleanor recently added a sign near the register that reads, "In this diner, we respect all scars, seen and unseen." It's more than a motto. It's become a community mantra. The high school adopted it for their counseling office. The local VA clinic posted it in their waiting room. It's spreading because people understand now that some wounds don't bleed, but they still need care. Every year, on the anniversary of the day the Marines first lined up outside the diner, Maria takes a rare day off. She drives to a veteran cemetery an hour away and walks among the headstones. She leaves a single flower on each grave of those from Bravo 17. For each one, she whispers softly, "I remember you." And I live every day for those who cannot. When customers now notice her scars, Maria no longer averts her gaze. Instead, she meets their eyes directly, steady, unflinching, the gaze of someone who knows exactly who she is and what she has survived. And that kind of clarity, it's more powerful than any uniform or title. Some stories don't need words to be told. Some heroes don't need capes or medals. And some scars, they become badges of honor, not despite being visible, but because they are. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged, only to see them vindicated through gratitude? Comment with the name of someone who taught you that courage isn't about appearance, but about choosing to act when no one else dares. And don't forget to subscribe to QH Incredible Stories, where scars aren't hidden, they're honored like the medals they truly are. It all started with a sneer. "You really think you should be serving customers with a face like that?" the patron had said, mocking Maria's scars. But she just smiled gently, her voice calm, her dignity unshaken. "I've served people like you before," she said, "but in much harsher conditions." The next morning, the diner fell utterly silent. A group of Marines stood in line outside, each holding a small object wrapped in cloth. Who were they looking for? Why had the woman mocked just yesterday become the recipient of military honors today? Because sometimes the world takes a little while to catch up to greatness, but when it does, it shows up with unit coins, patches, handshakes, tears, and love. And Maria Torres? She simply keeps pouring coffee, one cup, one story, one heart at a time.